first up is Jordyn Beth Fetkenheuer, Nicole Lynn Kleinschmidt, and Katie Nicole Paulich, and they're presenting on unwarranted blame, the role of hindsight bias in judgments of suicide likelihood and preventability. So come on up.
Hindsight bias can be defined as the I knew it all along effect. In other words, when someone knows of an outcome, they might see it as more likely to happen. And this is often seen in the context of sporting events. So after teams win, spectators may think that they could see the win coming all along. This can also be seen in more serious contexts, such as suicide. Death by suicide is growing increasingly common across the nation. In Wisconsin alone, one person dies by suicide every 9 hours. Outsiders often look for signs leading up to the suicide and often think that the person closest to the person who died by suicide should have been able to see the signs and prevent it. In fact, suicide loss survivors themselves wish they could have seen the signs and intervened earlier. But what if what is obvious in hindsight is not in foresight? Our study aims to answer this question. There's currently little research of good quality on hindsight bias in the context of suicide. My name is Jordyn Fetkenheuer.
Nicole Kleinschmidt. And I'm Katie Paulich.
And we are working with Dr. April Bleski-Rychek in the psychology department.
To examine hindsight bias in the context of suicide, we created an online survey asking participants to read through a hypothetical text message conversation between themselves and a friend of theirs named Maya. We base these text messages on known symptoms of depression, such as feelings of worthlessness, broken sleeping patterns, and turbulent relationships. After participants read through the text message conversation, we presented them with one of two conditions. Half of participants received the outcome knowledge that Maya subsequently died by suicide, while the other half did not receive any outcome knowledge. We then asked participants, based on the text messages, whether they believed Maya was depressed and the perceived likelihood that Maya would die by suicide. Participants also reported their perceptions of Maya and those close to her, such as the likability of Maya, and whether her friends and family should be trying harder to help her.
We had expected that participants who received the outcome knowledge of the suicide would, in looking back, perceive it as more likely. However, that is not what we found. Rather, participants who found out about the death by suicide did not perceive the death as any more likely as those who did not receive that outcome knowledge. Additionally, there was no difference between groups in perceptions of Maya or of those closest to her. But that's okay. Even though our research didn't quite turn out the way we thought it would, there is a silver lining. Our findings show that our participants are recognizing symptoms of depression and understand that these signs do not always lead to a suicide. Additionally, the majority of our participants recognize that Maya should be seeking professional help, which could be a sign that the stigma surrounding mental health has lessened. In retrospect, maybe it's not surprising our results look the way they do. Maybe we should have seen this coming. After all, hindsight is 20/20. Thank you.
Okay, we have one question from the judges.
Go ahead. Okay, I'm curious. You used a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Was that deliberate on your part?
We
Why?
had discussed how typically we thought that women were more likely to have a conversation like we had developed in a text string with a friend, and we know that suicide attempts are more likely among women. So we have discussed in the future using a different sex.
We also did choose the name Maya because we figured it would be ethnically ambiguous. So that's fine.
So quick question, you said that instances of suicide have been going up. Does that account for underreporting it in the past?
We didn't look into that specifically. We just looked into how, especially with like ages 18 to 34, it's now the second common cause of death. And just how often.